Hey everyone, Diavolo here, and today we're getting back to straight up aura farming as we make our way through the entire Return to Demon Castle arc from the world of solo leveling. This arc is the 12th arc in the story and kicks straight off after the events that happened inside of the A rank dungeon with Kargalan and his orc army. What follows is more of the series just continuing to top itself. This arc here is extremely critical to the overall story and, to be honest, what I consider to be the most heartfelt in the entire series. We pretty much get a full wrap up on part 1 of the story, being Jin's journey from absolute peasant to complete and utter dump truck of a force to be reckoned with. Of course, if you do end up enjoying the video, then leave a like and help in pushing this video to 5k likes, as it really shows that you all want more solo leveling content. Plus, next up is Jeju Island. If you are new around here as well, then consider subscribing, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. Either way, let's get into the entire Return to Demon Castle arc from the world of solo leveling. Anxiously staring at the ground, Jinho can't stop thinking about finally getting an answer from Jinwoo. To steel his nerves, he slaps his face for a quick morale boost, reminding himself of why he's even doing this. He's barely done with beating himself off when our hero steps into the room. As Jinwoo approaches, Jinho points out his tattered clothes, prompting Jinwoo to explain that he actually came straight from a dungeon. Amazed that Jinwoo is still training in dungeons, Jinho silently admits how incredible his boss is. Out loud, however, he launches into a rapid narration of everything that's happened since they last parted ways. Jinwoo only picks up on one part though, Go Manhuang showing up and spilling secrets about the Red Gate. Obviously, I probably got that dude's name wrong, but I'm just gonna call him Mr. Go for most of the time. Apparently, Mr. Go even told Jinho about Jinwoo rescuing the White Tiger Guild hunters. Jinwoo wonders why the man would share such information, but moves on to clarify something else. They claim that the Yoo Jin Guild can't function without him. An overzealous Jinho immediately yells will have full decision-making power if he joins the guild, hastily adding that he doesn't want Jinwoo to feel pressured. Hearing this, Jin begins stuttering his response out, leaving Jinho on the edge of his seat, hanging on every word that he's saying. Meanwhile, back at the Hunters Guild, Mr. Choi is practically floored as he processes the fact that Jinwoo participated in 2 of his raids. His face nearly turns blue as he recalls how Jinwoo worked as a miner for the first raid and a porter for the next. Kinhoon, the unlucky recipient of Mr. Choi's outburst, explains that he has no idea why Jinwoo would take on such roles. However, he emphasizes that Jinwoo never intended to interfere with their raid. Ki-hoon goes on to clarify that the shaman they encountered was far too powerful for them to handle, forcing Jinwoo to step in and save everyone there. What really frustrates Mr. Choi though isn't that Jinwoo intervened, it's that the Hunters Guild is now indebted to Jinwoo, just like the White Tiger Guild is. As he broods over this, a frown settles on his face. He can't ignore the fact that Jinwoo can summon multiple beasts, move as swiftly as an assassin type hunter, and even turn dead monsters into soldiers. What drives him insane is the mystery surrounding Jinwoo's full capabilities, because no one even knows the extent of his powers. Determined to assess Jinwoo's strength, Mr. Choi questions Ki-hoon. He wants to know how Jinwoo compares to himself. Cautiously, Ki-hoon begins a small speech about the balance required during any raid. He explains the need for 3 roles: attack, defense, and support, and our teams are doomed without these roles working together. Ultimately though, Ki-hoon admits that Jinwoo is extraordinary. His hands tremble as he confesses this and poses a question to Mr. Choi. Could he clear the highest level A rank dungeon alone? Hearing this, Mr. Choi's initial glare could kill, but after a moment, he acknowledges the truth. Against a horde of monsters, he simply wouldn't stand a chance. Admitting this wounds his pride, but it's clear that Mr. Choi's title as the ultimate hunter is becoming meaningless. Before he can sulk some more, Ki-hoon urges him to do whatever it takes to recruit Jinwoo, and with a heavy heart, Mr. Choi promises to try. The next day, paparazzi swarm the rank evaluation building, their cameras at the ready. They're here for a special guest, Lee Mansong, the TV star. Mansong, sitting inside his car, smirks, gloating over the massive turnout. His media director hands him tomorrow's headline, which reads, Lee Mansong, the star with superhuman powers. Though Mansong finds it kinda cheesy, he secretly loves the headline. Suddenly, 2 vehicles screech to a halt in front of the building, grabbing the paparazzi's attention. Out step Park Hyun-ho and Choi Jong-in, 2 high-profile guild masters. The reporters immediately recognize them and begin snapping photos of them as they walk forwards. Mr. Bark, puzzled by the commotion, mutters to himself. At the same time, it's as if the reporters even heard him, because one of them asks if he's here to recruit Lee Mansong. Having actually no idea who Mansong even is, Mr. Bark bluntly announces that he's not here for the TV star. Mr. Choi then addresses the press directly, revealing that Mansong has already joined with the Fiend Guild. He then reiterates that they're here for someone else. With their curiosity deflated, the reporters all start shuffling off, visibly disappointed. Seizing the moment, Mr. Bark mocks the Hunters Guild for their struggle with the previous day. Mr. Choi quickly claps back though, reminding him that the White Tiger Guild lost an A-rank rookie. The jab hits a nerve with Mr. Bark, and after spinning it around, he retorts that both guilds are now indebted to Jinwoo. Mr. Choi doesn't argue, and even admits that without Jinwoo, all his Tier 2 hunters probably would have died. That, he says, is why he also needs to recruit Jinwoo. It's the ethical thing to do here. In response, Mr. Bark points out that his guild also suffered casualties and emphasises their need for more S-rank hunters to strengthen their forces. Mr. Choi, hearing this and knowing that he also wants freaking Jinwoo, challenges him, asking if he's trying to start a war. The argument escalates until someone calls out both of their names. Turns out it's Lee Tae-gyu, the Fiend Guild's guildmaster and an S-rank hunter. With a smirk, he asks if the two are bickering over Lee Mansong, but both guildmasters immediately shout that they could not care less about Mansong. Confused, Tae-gyu watches the scene unfold, while poor Mansong convinces himself that the guildmasters are actually fighting over him. His driver interrupts to inform him that everything is now ready for his interview. Smiling confidently, Mansong steps out of the car into the blinding flashes of the camera. Meanwhile, in the lurking background, Sung Jinwoo observes the crowd, wondering why so many people are gathered at the association. Our hero becomes anxious as he considers the possibility that the press might already know about what happened in the dungeon. However, he quickly brushes the thought aside when he realizes that none of the reporters recognize him. The immediate problem for him though is actually getting through everyone here to the association building, so he decides to push his way through the crowd. By the time he reaches the front, a guard steps in his way, asking if he actually works for the association. The guard glances towards the reporters and firmly tells Jinwoo that he can't just waltz right past them. Jinwoo tries to explain that he has an appointment, but the guard remains adamant. Meanwhile, Lee Mansong spots Jinwoo and silently hopes that the guards will throw him out, only for the chairman, Go Gun-hee, to arrive and directly contradict him. Both the guard and Mansong are stunned to see the chairman personally intervene. Without wasting a moment, the chairman reminds Mansong that he granted permission for the TV star press conference to be held outside the association. Mansong, visibly shaken, offers no argument as Mr. Gun-hee then escorts Jinwoo into the building, leaving the onlookers to whisper among themselves, speculating about Jinwoo's true identity. Unsurprisingly, Mansong is furious about sharing the spotlight with some random ass dude in his eyes. He tries to mask his irritation, but orders the guards to find out who Jinwoo is and what his connection to the chairman might be. The TV star then heads inside, but immediately runs into another roadblock, Mr. Woo, a hunter stationed at the entrance to the evaluation room. Mr. Woo explains to him that another hunter's re-evaluation is currently underway and that no one else will be permitted entry until it concludes at 11 o'clock. This news obviously does not sit well for Mansong. He glances at his phone and realizes it's only 10:30, deducing that Jinwoo must be the hunter undergoing an evaluation. 30 minutes feels like an eternity to Mansong, who's been shouting at Mr. Woo, reminding him that the reporters outside have gathered specifically for his 11 o'clock press conference. He even name drops the chairman, hoping to leverage some connection, but when this tactic fails, Mansong lowers his guard and attempts to appeal to Mr. Woo's sense of celebrity, emphasizing that he is the famous Lee Mansong. None of this sways Mr. Woo though, who simply repeats that Mansong can enter at 11. Frustrated, Mansong reports to threats, bragging that his father is the vice president of Yoo Jin Construction, a company that provides substantial financial support to the association. He even goes as far as suggesting that Mr. Woo should show him proper respect in front of the reporters. However, this last remark backfires spectacularly. Mr. Woo, visibly irritated, removes his glasses and glares at Mansong with such intensity that the TV star practically shrinks into himself. For added effect, Mr. Woo calmly asks if Mansong is truly prepared to face the consequences of his actions. Overwhelmed by the hunter's intimidating presence, Mansong backs down, visibly shaken. Meanwhile, inside of the building, Chairman Go Gun-hee and Jinwoo walk side by side, eventually encountering Bark and Choi standing off to the side. The chairman points out that the two guildmasters have been waiting for over an hour now. He goes on to explain to Jinwoo that it has been 2 years since the last S-rank hunter appeared, making his presence a monumental event. Given the immense strength Jinwoo demonstrated during the Hunters Guild raid, Mr. Gun-hee is certain that both guildmasters are eager to recruit him. Jinwoo is then led into a spacious room, where he exchanges pleasantries with the evaluation official. Before proceeding, the official requests a demonstration of Jinwoo's abilities to determine his class. To humour the man, Jinwoo summons a single shadow, which is enough to leave the official visibly impressed. The man stammers as he tries to comprehend the summoning ability, prompting the chairman to interject. Mr. Gun-hee points out that Jinwoo can summon far more than just one shadow. Though reluctant, Jinwoo knows that many people have already witnessed his full power, making it pretty much futile to continue hiding his capabilities. With a resigned sigh, he summons his usual trio of Iron, Tank and Egress, along with Tusk and several high orc shadows. The sight is nothing short of astounding. The official is left speechless, and even the seasoned guildmasters, Mr. Bark and Mr. Choi, can't hide their shock, and their eyes widen as though they've seen a ghost. Jinwoo then delivers the final blow by casually mentioning that he can summon 100 more shadows if needed. The official's disbelief is palpable, and Mr. Bark grits his teeth, realizing just how extraordinary Jinwoo's magical abilities are. The stark difference in power compared to the last time Mr. Bark saw him is almost overwhelming. After completing the evaluation, Jinwoo then exits the room, proudly holding his new hunter license. Mr. Bark tries to call him over, but Jinwoo is too engrossed in admiring his S-rank status. When the guildmaster finally asks for a moment of his time, Jinwoo politely declines, claiming he's actually got unfinished business to attend to. Ignoring the guildmaster's warnings, he then reaches for the door, only to be greeted by a sea of anxious reporters and flashing cameras. The news of a new S-rank hunter has already spread, and the commotion is in full swing. Elsewhere during a free period, Jinha was chatting with her friend when Song Yi suddenly shoved her phone into her face, insisting she take a look. Apparently, her brother was on TV. Naturally, Jinha found this extremely hard to believe and asks Song Yi why Jinwoo of all people would be on the television. Skipping back though, and about 10 minutes earlier, Lee Mansong had been scrambling to hold the reporter's attention. In a desperate attempt, he launched into a dramatic speech about fighting magical beasts even if his rank turned out to be low. He framed it as a way to repay all of the love and kindness his fans had showed him. Like a seasoned politician, he promised to be a hunter who served the people, and the audience lapped up his words like candy. When a reporter asked if he planned to retire as Asia's biggest star, Mansong was too absorbed in his own self-promotion to notice. Instead, he stood there, basking in the attention, hands open as if to welcome the admiration as he smiled mischievously. The idea of retirement to him was laughable. In reality, Mansong had already secured an A rank and devised a 2-year plan to rake in millions by promoting the famed guild. This plan would also conveniently squash rumours and distract from the fact that he had avoided his mandatory military service. In Mansong's mind, his narrative was airtight. He would claim to have sacrificed his illustrious career to protect the citizens. But just as he was thanking Mr. Lim Tae-kyu for accepting him into the guild, breaking news about a potential S-rank hunter sent shockwaves through the room. Mansong's media manager, unable to keep his voice down while speaking to a source, inadvertently leaked the information. The other reporters then ended up catching wind of the story, and suddenly, Mansong was just old news. To make matters worse, the association officially confirmed the rumour by posting about Jinwoo on their websites. The reporters quickly pieced together the timeline. The association had shut its doors that morning for someone who clearly wasn't Lee Mansong. The frenzy reached its peak as reporters raced to uncover more about this S-rank hunter, ignoring the TV star entirely. Mr. Wu and his surveillance team stepped in to block their advance, but the reporters grew agitated, accusing him of withholding information about Jinwoo. Meanwhile, Mansong sat in shock, lamenting his bad luck. Why did an S-rank hunter have to show up today, of all days? Even his media manager shifted focus to Jinwoo, promising Mansong that they'd reconnect later on. To Mansong's dismay, he then overheard the manager instructing their office to update the headlines immediately, obviously wiping him from the headlines that were supposed to release tomorrow. Reduced to a former shadow of himself now, Mansong's day hit rock bottom when Jinwoo then emerged from the building, stealing what little spotlight had remained. Elsewhere in town, his former mining boss caught a glimpse of the news and showed it to a subordinate. While some admired Jinwoo's achievements, one particular hater grumbled, accusing him of being a criminal. This skeptic leaned closer to scrutinize the broadcast, but the reporter's words made it clear Jinwoo was South Korea's 10th S-rank hunter. Hearing this, the hater's bravado crumbled as he trembled like a fish out of water. The news spread like wildfire, reaching restaurants, dojos, and even Jinho's father. The report categorized Jinwoo as a mage-type hunter, but Mr. Yoo Myung-han was more interested in whether his son had succeeded in recruiting him or not. Jinho, bowing his head in shame, confessed that he had indeed failed. Instead, Jinwoo had revealed plans to form his own guild and invited Jinho to be the vice guildmaster. This revelation surprised Mr. Myung-han, but he merely smiled and asked if Jinho knew why he wanted to create the Yoo Jin Guild in the first place. Jinho guessed it was because the hunting business was lucrative, but his father clarified that money was never the motive. With enough wealth to last multiple lifetimes, Mr. Myung-han had no interest in petty profits. He explained that the guild was meant to protect the family. As hunters grew stronger, some even surpassed national military powers. These individuals, known as national-level hunters, were the most formidable beings on the entire planet. Mr. Myung-han believed neither the government nor the legal system could shield them from such forces. His plan was to build a guild of trustworthy and dependable hunters who could safeguard the family. Smiling, he told Jinho that he had already found such a hunter in Jinwoo. With that, Mr. Myung-han offered Jinho the opportunity to take charge of the Yoo Jin Guild. Hearing this, Jinho's face lit up, but the moment was short-lived as he enthusiastically declined, announcing that he would rather take the Vice Guildmaster position in Jinwoo's guild. Back at the association building now, Jinwoo struggled to comprehend why the reporter's attention was on him instead of Lee Mansong. They bombarded him with questions about how he felt and incessantly demanded he smile for the cameras. Mr. Woo, noticing his discomfort, tapped Jinwoo on the shoulder and offered to get him out of the situation, warning that the attention would drain him. Before he could finish though, Jinwoo vanished, slipping behind the crowd with incredible speed. The reporters and onlookers were left in stunned silence, their mouths agape. Mr. Choi noted Jinwoo's impressive athleticism, despite being categorized as a mage, while Mr. Bark was even more surprised by his natural speed, revealing that he hadn't actually been able to see him move at all. Back in the past, Mr. Bark had previously estimated Jinwoo's strength, but now his scale was completely shattered. Forced to acknowledge Jinwoo's immense power, the Guildmaster struggled to understand how Jinwoo had grown so strong so quickly. He briefly considered attributing it to Jinwoo's reawakening, but dismissed the thought, instead entering the idea that Jinwoo might be one of those rare hunters capable of continually leveling up. With our MC's face plastered on every screen, it was inevitable that Mr. Huang would eventually learn of him. From his hospital bed, he reacted with surprise upon seeing that Jinwoo was somehow still alive. The association, meanwhile, had connections to an auction house, prompting Jinwoo to take the Orb of Avarice there for appraisal. The groundsman examined the orb, confessing he'd never encountered a red crystal ball before, let alone one boasting an amplification range of 100%. The appraiser explained that even the most skilled craftsmen can only create artifacts with a 50-ish% amplification rate, making this orb extremely valuable. He confidently stated that Mr. Choi would pay a fortune for it. When the appraiser asked where Jinwoo had obtained such an artifact, Jinwoo replied that he found it in a dungeon, a claim the appraiser found dubious as artifacts of this caliber weren't just lying around. The appraiser offered to auction the orb at a premium price, but Jinwoo merely promised to consider the idea for him. His immediate concern was obtaining tools to protect himself from flames in obviously the demon castle. When Jinwoo inquired about fire-resistant tools, the appraiser assured him they were easy as to find. However, Jinwoo pointed out how he couldn't actually locate any online, prompting the appraiser to explain that such artifacts were too expensive to list publicly. Fire magic, he added, was the most common type of attack magic, and Jinwoo's mind hearing this immediately went to individuals like Mr. Song, Choi Jong-in, Tusk, and his shadow mages. Jinwoo's thoughts though were then interrupted when the auctioneer guided him to a room filled with gear, all secured behind glass. Jinwoo questioned the effectiveness of a thin sheet of glass as a security measure, noting the lack of other precautions. The auctioneer though confidently explained that the glass was magic imbued and could withstand a full A rank attack. He jokingly challenged Jinwoo to try and break it, promising the artifacts as a reward if he succeeded. Without hesitation, Jinwoo began channeling his strength, visibly startling the auctioneer with his sheer power radiating from him. Panicking, the man stopped Jinwoo mid-action, confessing that he was just totally joking. He revealed that breaking the glass would summon the Hunters Guild due to a security agreement. Obviously hearing this, Jinwoo backed off, but the auctioneer couldn't fathom why a mage-type hunter would exude such physical strength. Jinwoo then inquired about daggers, and the auctioneer handed him over to the weapons specialist. As the specialist attended to Jinwoo, the auctioneer noticed a crack in the supposedly unbreakable glass. He broke into a sweat, realizing Jinwoo had caused it without even touching the freaking glass. Meanwhile, Jinwoo examined a dagger priced at 30 million won. Analyzing it, he determined it was a B-rank weapon, weaker than his Night Killer and roughly equivalent to Kasaka's Fang. To prove his point, he pulled out a random weapon he had purchased from the shop and asked the specialist to approve it. The specialist admired the craftsmanship and valued the weapon at over 100 million, leaving Jinwoo visibly shocked. He had acquired it for just 2.8 million gold, which reminded him just how much stronger his shop's weapons were compared to the overpriced gear on the real-world market. Concluding that the Orb of Avarice was too valuable to even sell, he decided to eventually keep it. Elsewhere in front of the White Tiger Guild, Mr. Park Yun-ho sat with his fingers interlocked, deep in thought. He couldn't comprehend how a hunter could continuously level up. Thanks to his enlightened state, which allowed him to gauge others' skill levels accurately, he was certain Jinwoo had been far weaker when they met at the Red Gate. Now, however, things had clearly changed. Mr. Park admitted to himself that it was foolish to think someone as strong as Jinwoo would join an existing guild when he was powerful enough to simply form his own. He concluded that Jinwoo would always remain at the top if he continued to grow even stronger. Though Mr. Park was ready to abandon the idea of recruiting him, his subordinates, including Mr. Ahn, were more optimistic about it. They decided to give it one last shot, even if it meant waiting outside Jinwoo's apartment building. When they arrived, they found the area swarming with reporters. Mr. Ah, seeing this, cursed, realizing that they're going to have to camp out. Inside, Jinha peeked out of the window to survey the chaos below, and quickly sat back down after the reporters spotted her and began taking photos. She informed Jinwoo about the crowd outside, and although he wanted to confront them, she adamantly opposed the idea. She reminded him of his existing haters and argued that he shouldn't make things worse. Jinwoo didn't really understand her concern, believing he hadn't done anything wrong here. Jinha reminded him of how he'd actually blown off the reporters earlier, not answering their questions, but reassured him that the situation wasn't bothering her at all. Their conversation though was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Frustrated, Jinwoo went to give the intruder a piece of his mind, only to find Jinho standing there, crying. With tears in his eyes, Jinho reveals that his father had kicked him out. Jinwoo initially assumed Jinho owned his own place, but seeing this, it became clear to him that the house had been in his father's name all along. Jinho begged to stay with Jinwoo, but bro was less than thrilled to have him here. When Jinha joined in on the conversation, curious about who her brother was talking to, Jinwoo denied knowing who the random man at the door was and just shut the door in his face. Undeterred though, Jinho banged on the door, pleading just to be let in. Meanwhile, at the Yo household, Jinho's parents discussed him. Mrs. Yo scolded her husband for being far too harsh, but Mr. Mwang-han argued that he hadn't been harsh enough. He believed Jinho should have forged his own path instead of working under someone else. Mid-sentence, Mwang-han suddenly felt discomfort though, and mentioned experiencing double vision. Moments later, he clutched his chest and fell to his knees as the discomfort began to escalate. Back at good old bro's residence, Jinwoo pushed the door to his sister's room, checking on her while she was still sleeping. A nagging fear lingered in his mind. What if someone tried to target her to get to him? Acting on this concern, he summoned all of Tusk's guards. Instantly, 3 high orcs appeared before him, their hulking forms ready for action. Jinwoo frowned though. By his recollection, Tusk had 4 guards. Where was the last one? He asked about the missing guard, only to remember the unfortunate creature had been destroyed by slamming it into the ceiling, rendering it completely unsuitable for shadow extraction. Setting that thought aside though for now, Jinwoo dismissed 2 of the guards, sending them back into the shadows. To the remaining general, he assigned a crucial task, protecting Jinha. Without hesitation, the Shadow Orc merged seamlessly with Jinha's shadow. Laying there, she didn't stir, completely unaware of the silent protector now bound to her. Stepping outside, Jinwoo gazed down at his neighborhood. Security here wasn't really that sufficient, so he decided to bolster it up himself. He summoned some of his shadow foot soldiers, ordering them to patrol the area and stay out all night. Satisfied that his troops could handle anything short of a high-ranking hunter, Jinwoo felt a rare sense of peace flow over him. This, he thought, was his small way of contributing to his community's safety. At daybreak, Jinwoo climbed into a car with Jinho. He wondered if his companion had gotten any rest, but Jinho cheerfully revealed that he'd spent the night at a motel with excellent facilities. Jinwoo, mildly impressed by this, suggested he stay there until they secured an office space for the new guild. Truthfully, Jinwoo hadn't expected Jinho to fully abandon his father's guild, and now that he had, Jinwoo could find no fault with the decision. As he reflected on this, Jinho interrupted his thoughts, asking why they were headed to Daesung Tower so early in the morning. Jinwoo, though, as usual, kept his intentions to himself, sliding open the car door before telling Jinho that he'll be back shortly. Moments later, Jinwoo accessed the demon's castle dungeon, preparing himself for the dangers that lay ahead. Things were bound to be exponentially more difficult from this point forward. Anticipating this, he'd come equipped with a wind robe and a nameless ring imbued with water magic. This robe, in particular, would shield him from combustive flames. Draping it over his shoulder, Jinwoo then received an unexpected notification: a new quest. Initially surprised, Jinwoo quickly realized that this quest was different. The task was to defeat the demon lord, Baran, on the top floor and retrieve his soul. If successful, he would be rewarded with a runestone, 30 extra stat points, and an undisclosed prize. Seeing this, Jin knows that the rewards are clearly superior to those of the last time he visited the place. Jinwoo was particularly intrigued by the runestone, which could grant him a job-specific skill once broken, just as he had acquired Shadow Extraction, Shadow Preservation, and Monarch's Domain in the past. Excited by the prospect of a new skill, Jinwoo turned his attention to the system's new announcement. Floors 1 through 76 were already accessible. When prompted to choose, he naturally selected the 76th floor. A reddish portal then enveloped him, and in the blink of an eye, he arrived there. The sight that greeted him was nothing short of monstrous. Demons of various sizes loomed before him, some as large as 6-story buildings. Thankfully, Jinwoo had already equipped Tusk with the Orb of Avarice. Activating his size-enhancing ability, Tusk grew to match the towering demons in stature. Without hesitation, he unleashed the orb's power, summoning a massive fire spell. The explosion obliterated 4 demons at once, reducing the surrounding area to ash. Jinwoo shielded himself with the wind robe, marveling at Tusk's impressive prowess. Even though his strength had decreased since becoming a shadow soldier, Tusk remained formidable. Impressed by the mastery of the orb, Jinwoo decided to leave it in Tusk's care for the foreseeable future. By now, Jinwoo himself had reached level 81, with numerous improvements to his stats. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Mr. Mwang Han stirred from his sleep. Groggily, he asked his doctor how long he had been unconscious. The answer, 2 days. Dismissing his collapse as exhaustion, he inquired about his health. Instead of a direct response though, the doctor posed a curious question. Had Mr. Mwang Han been in close contact with a hunter or an awakened being? Confused, Mr. Mwang Han pressed for an explanation. The doctor began to elaborate, mentioning a condition known as eternal slumber, and patients afflicted with this ailment can never regain consciousness. While their bodies remained alive, their life force was steadily drained, requiring a mana-powered life support device to sustain them. The disease had first appeared after the advent of the initial gates, claiming countless lives, especially among those who couldn't afford the life support. Still perplexed, Mr. Mwang Han asked what this had to do with hunters. The doctor explained that mana was deeply intertwined with eternal slumber. Some individuals were naturally intolerant to mana, and prolonged exposure triggered the disease's symptoms. This meant essence stones, mana crystals, and even hunters themselves could serve as potential triggers. The sudden onset of Mr. Mwang Han's symptoms indicate that he had encountered such a trigger recently. When asked if there was a hunter in the Yoo family, Mr. Mwang Han fell silent. Jinho's face immediately came into his mind. As he pondered this revelation, he couldn't help but reflect on how integral mana had become in modern society, and how those who were intolerant to it were effectively doomed. A sad smile crossed his face as he acknowledged his fate. He, a man of great accomplishments in life, was now a victim of natural selection. It's a crazy thing to chuck in a script, I don't know, natural selection, don't go searching that one up. Yet he refused to accept defeat, convincing himself that the battle wasn't over. At the same time, on an island off the coast of Japan, a mutated ant landed on the shore. Two low-ranking hunters strolled through the streets of their island in Japan, taking in the peaceful atmosphere that came with living in such a remote place. One of them, Mr. Nogawa, is well known among the townsfolk. An elderly man stopped to thank him for keeping the neighborhood safe, but Nogawa mostly brushed aside the compliments. The hunter beside him was a newcomer to the island. Recognizing this, Mr. Nogawa smiled and pleaded with the old man to extend a warm welcome to his new colleague. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the two excused themselves and continued their patrol. As they walked, Nogawa shared some wisdom with the rookie. Never skip morning rounds, he said firmly, and make an effort to connect with the townspeople. If a gate ever opens on this island, we need to know about it as soon as possible, otherwise the entire island could be wiped out. He went on to explain the critical role of the mana meter. Once they identified a gate, the next step would be to call for reinforcements. Unfortunately, help would take almost 3 days to arrive, a delay that often proves disastrous. To put it bluntly, Nogawa added with a weary smile that this island's luck is just plain terrible. As he continues lecturing this newcomer, something in the distance caught his eye. It was slowly moving towards them. Squinting, they both realized what it was: a winged ant. Meanwhile, back in the demon's castle dungeon, the floor was littered with the corpses of countless monsters. Jinwoo's intelligence stats had grown significantly, and it showed in the carnage around him. Yet, he couldn't help but feel frustrated. These demons couldn't be extracted, which means he couldn't add them to his shadow army. If he could have done so, he thought that his forces would have become unstoppable. Determined to maximize his efficiency, Jinwoo makes an executive decision. He splits his forces into 6 groups. Tusk leads the first team, Igris the second team, Iron the third, Tank the fourth, and the remaining 2 teams were commanded by High Orcs. He gave each group 2 tasks: to hunt down and defeat every demon in sight and report back as soon as they found the entry permit to the next floor. With their orders clear, the teams dispersed. Left alone now, Jinwoo realized he would have to forego collecting other items on this floor to focus entirely on reaching the higher levels. Soon after, his interface lit up with a flood of notifications. He had gained 1,500 experience points, all thanks to his shadow soldiers. As long as they aren't destroyed here, he wouldn't need to expend any mana himself. Still, for their sake, Jinwoo downed another mana potion to ensure he could support them if needed. Days passed as his troops annihilated the demons. When Tank finally returned, he had himself leveled up to 24, 10 levels higher than where he'd left off. Jinwoo himself had also grown stronger, but the most noticeable improvement was in his shadows. He had managed to reach the 80th floor faster than expected, but now they'd been stuck there for 2 days. The entry permit was still missing, and this led Jinwoo to conclude that stronger demons were likely lurking somewhere on this floor. His suspicions were confirmed when he felt his MP draining rapidly. Alarmed, he turned, trying to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. Someone or something was systematically wiping out his shadow soldiers. The rate at which his MP was being consumed left him with no other choice but to recall his troops. The following day, the attack resumed. However, Jinwoo had to withdraw his soldiers once more. Frustrated, he sat down and used a stick to sketch out the floor's layout and the movements of his teams. Analysing the patterns, he noticed something odd. Igris' team and one of the High Orc teams had suffered constant losses, but Tusk's team stationed nearby had been entirely avoided. This led Jinwoo to a chilling realization. The demons weren't just strong, they were also intelligent. They were deliberately avoiding Tusk's team, likely recognizing his immense power and instead targeting weaker groups. Predicting their next move, Jinwoo set a trap. He hid behind a rock while Tank and his team prepared for an ambush. Just as he expected, 4 demons on horseback appeared. Among them were 3 knights and 1 noble. Tank roared in defiance, but one of the knights immediately charged forward, slashing the bear's throat with ruthless precision. From his hiding spot, Jinwoo observed the battle closely. The knight fought with such skill and speed that his shadow struggled to regenerate fast enough to keep up. It became clear that Tank's team stood no chance against these opponents. Realizing that he needed to step in, Jinwoo activated his camouflage skill. His sudden appearance startled the closest knight, who lunged at him with a spear. Jinwoo, though, easily sidestepped the attack and retaliated with a brutal kick, knocking the knight's head clean off. A notification then flashed before him. 3,000 experience points gained. Fueled by greed for more, Jinho dashed towards the remaining knights. His speed was so overwhelming that they didn't even register his presence until he was upon them. With his dagger in hand, Jinho carved through the two knights, reducing them to lifeless pieces that fell to the ground. Only the demon noble remained, and for the first time, Jinho finally saw something unexpected in his opponent's eyes: fear. Instantly, the demon noble lunged at Jinho with a spear, jabbing it in his direction as quickly as her hands could move. Of course, Jinho dodged each strike with ease, but he noticed something alarming. Her attacks were precise, targeting his vital organs with every thrust. This level of skill placed her at an S rank in the demon world. Despite her precision, the noble was too slow for Jinho. He quickly countered by slicing through her spear with his dagger, then aimed directly for her helmet. He was just about to deal the finishing blow when she did something completely unexpected. She surrendered. Jinho froze mid-attack, stunned by her actions. He couldn't shake the feeling that he'd encountered far too many demons who could speak the language of humans. Her voice hinted at her identity, and he suspected she was actually a woman. To confirm this theory, he removed her helmet, revealing that he was indeed correct. The demon noble then immediately began pleading for her life. Tank and his team, still recovering from the battle, were visibly furious. Jinho turned to the noble and questioned her audacity. How could she seek forgiveness after destroying his soldiers? The demon noble, standing her ground, claimed it was her duty as a guardian of the floor to protect the demons from intruders like him. Her words left Jinho conflicted. Could he really justify sparing her after killing everyone else? The noble argued that her knights would have been happy to die for her sake, as it was actually their duty. Looking at her, Jinho could only see her as selfish. There was still something about her human-like appearance that made him hesitate to strike her down, but the moment he looked away, she saw an opportunity to attack. The demon noble lunged at him again, attempting to stab him in the back. She might have even exceeded, but Tusk activated his hymn of protection just in time to block the attack. Enraged, Jinho turned to face her, only for the noble to drop to the ground in panic. She buried her head between her legs, apologizing profusely and promising to do whatever he wanted if he spared her life. Jinho couldn't help but wonder if she was shameless, but then he remembered his primary goal, obtaining the entry permit. He then asked her directly if she could help him get one. To add pressure, Tusk used a levitation skill on her to lift her up into the air. Suspended in midair now, the demon noble shouted that her clan had a permit locked away and that she could take Jinho to it. Finally, the mystery of the missing permit was solved for Jinho. She even offered to guide him to the locations of all of the other permits. Jinho found the offer extremely tempting, but remained cautious, still wondering if he could trust her. To test her sincerity, he leaned in close and stared straight into her eyes. Staring back, her face turned bright red like a stop sign. Without breaking eye contact, Jinho unleashed his bloodlust skill, enveloping her in an overwhelming aura of intimidation. The effect was immediate. She broke into a sweat, stammering as she swore she wasn't lying. Jinho leaned in even closer, pushing her to the edge. The noble swore on her life that she was telling the truth. Satisfied, Jinho turned away and told her to lead him to the permit. He promised to leave quietly if she then kept her word. The noble, who ends up introducing herself as Esil or Esil, correct me down below if I get it wrong, thanked him profusely for sparing her life. As they walked, Jinho suddenly stopped and asked her about her people's origins. Back in the real world, chaos was beginning to unfold on the secluded island in Japan. The mutated ant had already claimed several lives. One of its victims was being devoured while a horrified man watched helplessly. The ant then turned its attention towards the man, opening its massive jaws before feasting on him as well. After finishing, the mutant spread its wings and flew to another part of the island, leaving a trail of death in its wake. Back in the dungeon, Esil introduced herself as the eldest daughter of the Radaru clan. She began explaining her clan's history, but Jinho interrupted her. He had a more pressing question. Did she ever hear a voice in her head telling her to kill humans? Esil's face registered shock. She admitted she often heard voices, but they didn't instruct her to ever harm humans. Instead, they commanded her to protect the area she occupied. This revelation intrigued Jinho. He realized that monsters seem to exist for different purposes. Magical beasts, for example, live to solely kill humans, while the demons in this dungeon seem to exist to solely protect it. Turning to her, Jinho asks how long he's been hearing these voices. Esil explains that the voices had been there since she and her people first woke up in the dungeon. Jinwoo, hearing this, was taken aback. The way she phrased it implied that these demons came from somewhere else. Seizing the opportunity to learn more about the system, he asked where they had lived before the dungeon. This was when Jinwoo discovered the existence of the demon realm. Curious, he pressed further, asking what the demons had been doing there. Esil's expression faltered, her mind seemingly glitching as she tried to respond. Even so, she managed to reveal that the demons had been preparing for war before they woke up in the castle. Still stuck in her trance-like state, Esil is asked what kind of war the demons are preparing for. She reveals that they are gearing up to face a powerful enemy, one so formidable that it would require the united strength of the entire demon race. Jinwoo remains silent, observing her closely, as she suddenly quips that she has said far more than she's allowed. As punishment, the system begins to terminate the conversation, and Esil starts glitching visibly. The scene sparks Jinwoo's memory of his encounter with Baruka, where a similar series of events unfolded. He realizes there must be a critical clue in what Esil just revealed. Everything that he's experienced, the leveling system, the instant dungeons, and the rewards, has created a world that feels like a massive game to him. With this realization, Jinwoo begins to consider the possibility that the demons themselves might also be a part of the gameplay. Jinwoo presses Esil further, asking about the type of enemy they're preparing to fight. However, the girl suddenly seems lost and clueless. Her head begins to ache violently, and before she can explain herself, she collapses. Jinwoo rushes forward and catches her just before she hits the ground. Frustrated, Jinwoo concludes that the system must have reacted strongly to his questioning. The system's power continues to baffle Jinwoo. It's an entity far beyond human comprehension, capable of influencing the world and its inhabitants in ways he doesn't fully understand. With this in mind, he begins to suspect that the enemies the demons are preparing to fight may hold answers to the mysteries surrounding the system itself. Meanwhile, in the real world, chaos has completely erupted on a secluded Japanese island. The mutated ant has reached a large population center, tearing through both weapons and their wielders with ruthless efficiency. One of the knights refers to it as a magical beast and calls the others to launch an all-out attack on it. However, another knight hesitates, insisting that this creature isn't an ordinary beast. Before he can finish his sentence though, the ant swiftly beheads him. As the carnage unfolds, it becomes clear that the mutant ant is operating with strategy. It starts by targeting and eliminating weaker E-rank hunters, systematically decreasing the island's defenses. Once the number of fighters has dwindled, it goes after the healers to ensure that no one can now recover. Observing this, a knight realizes the creature can assess its disadvantages and act accordingly. He begins to wonder if the beast possesses intelligence itself. Amidst the destruction, the mutant ant is caught on a black box camera from a burning vehicle. This footage is then later sent to South Korea's Hunter Association for review. During a presentation, Mr. Wu explains that the mutant was eventually defeated, but only after causing substantial devastation. According to the report, the mutant infiltrated their side of the border after wreaking havoc on the Japanese island. Fortunately, it was brought down within a day thanks to an emergency dispatch of hunters. However, the victory came at a cost. 6 hunters were killed during the battle. Among the dispatched team was an A-rank hunter who played a pivotal role in turning the tide of the fight. The damage caused by the mutant highlights its lethality. With 294 casualties and 184 hunters dispatched to stop it, the situation underscores that really only A-rank hunters or higher can handle such creatures. The mutant's ability to sense danger made it particularly difficult to corner, as it constantly found ways to escape. As the officials then murmur amongst themselves, Mr. Wu praises the Japanese hunter network's efficiency. He raises an unsettling question: what might happen if the mutant had successfully reached the mainland of Korea? Chairman Go Gun-hee speaks up, pointing out a sobering fact. The mutant flew over 150 kilometers to an island near Jeju, demonstrating its ability to travel extremely long distances. If it had possibly altered its course, it could have easily reached Korean territories like Wando or Jindo County. The chairman, annoyed, expresses concern about the lack of manpower to defend every Korean island, given that low-ranking hunters would stand no chance against such beasts. Lost in thought, the chairman considers which countries might come to South Korea's aid in such a scenario. China and Russia are dismissed due to their vast territories requiring protection. The United States briefly crosses his mind, but he recalls their refusal to help during the first S-rank gate incident. As the meeting concludes, Chairman Go Gun-hee begins to leave when Mr. Wu approaches him with a whisper. He reveals that someone has already secretly contacted the association. Intrigued, the chairman listens as Mr. Wu discloses the contact, Hwang Dong-so of the Scavenger Guild. Apparently, Hwang wishes to participate in the upcoming Jeju Island raid. Chairman Go Gun-hee is visibly surprised, but quickly deduces Hwang's ulterior motive, Jin Woo. Mr. Wu as well confirms the suspicion and explains that he has already submitted a request to deny Hwang entry into South Korea, citing the conflict between him and Park Yeon-ho during the Red Gate incident. However, that's not the only surprise. Another hunter has reached out to the association, leaving the chairman once again stunned. This time, the individual in question is Andre Thomas, a renowned national-level hunter covered in some dope-ass tattoos. Back inside the demon castle, Esil finally regains consciousness. Jinwoo, while she was knocked out, had propped her head up on a small piece of cloth, but her first question upon waking up is when she fell asleep. Jinwoo calmly reveals that not all demons are friendly towards one another. He gestures towards a heap of monster corpses, explaining that they all tried to kill her. Esil, however, seems more concerned about Jinwoo saving her than the danger she was in. She thanks him before clarifying that the demons without intelligence do not recognize the intelligent ones as their kin. Changing the subject, Jinwoo asks how long it will take to reach the location of the entry permit. Esil leads him down a narrow path, eventually bringing him to her family's castle. Upon arrival, she questions the guard about her father's whereabouts and orders him to show Jinwoo some respect due to him being her special guest. The pair eventually track down her father in the throne room. There, Esil announces Jinwoo's presence, and our hero notes that this room must be where the boss fight would have taken place. Esil's father wastes no time shouting at her, "What do you think you're doing here, and who is this man?" Esil refers to Jinwoo as her guest though, but her father remains suspicious, asking what kind of guest brings an army of soldiers with him. Surprised, Esil realizes her father has extremely sharp senses. Jinwoo admits this, but is unimpressed when the king foolishly orders his guards to attack him. With blades drawn, the guards surround Jinwoo, but he remains completely unfazed. Calmly, he announces that he promises to leave quietly if given the entry permits. The king begins to sweat, realizing Jinwoo could be the one who has been slaughtering demons at an alarming rate. Although the Radaru clan hold noble status, they rank 20th in strength, one of the weakest clans in the demon hierarchy. Knowing Jinwoo had defeated powerful figures like Metis and Vulcan, the king understands that they stand no chance against him. Nervously questioning if all he wants is the permit, Jinwoo shakes his head while letting him know that he has one more request. Gripping Esil's shoulder, he declares that he's going to pinch her for a while as he needs a guide to the permits on the other floors. Instantly, the king's expression shifts to one of uncontrollable rage. Jinwoo, confused with this sudden change, wonders if he said something wrong. Skipping slightly forward though, and after dinner, the king brings up Jinwoo's request once again. It turns out he actually misunderstood Jinwoo's earlier request to borrow Esil, and he now deeply regrets negotiating with a human and wishes he hadn't even fought Jinwoo in the first place. Had he known Jinwoo commanded all of the dark shadows that were behind him, he would have avoided the battle altogether. Moving forward, the king confirms that Jinwoo won't put his daughter in harm's way, and Jinwoo readily gives him his word. Moments later, a servant arrives with a permit. As Jinwoo receives its contents, he wonders if he'll need to collect one of these permits from every demon clan going forward. Eager to leave, Jinwoo stands up and calls over Esil's attention. She quickly gets on board with the plan, and soon after, Jinwoo receives a party request from the demon noble. The party system allows experience points to be shared among members, but only based on their contributions in battle. This doesn't obviously sit well with Jinwoo, so he warns Esil to not intervene in any fights they encounter, assuring her that he'll handle everything himself. After stealing a glance at her, they headed towards the next floor. Upon arrival, Jinwoo asked if she'll be okay without her horse. Esil clarifies that only party members can travel between floors together. She then hands him a bottle of liquor, explaining that her father had prepared it as a gift for the chief of the Gash clan. Apparently, her family had gifts ready for all of the clans, and when Jinwoo asked why, Esil explained that the gifts are meant for negotiation purposes. However, Jinwoo has no intent of negotiating. He starts by asking if Esil's people are on good terms with the Gash clan. She shakes her head, explaining that hierarchical conflicts are common in the demon realm. The only thing she knows for sure is that the Gash clan is relatively reasonable. In response, Jinwoo tells her to wait for him, assuring her that he won't take too long. Moments later, Jinwoo and his shadows reduce the entire Gash clan's castle to ashes. Meanwhile, back at the Hunter Association in South Korea, Chairman Gun Go-hee meets with Thomas Andre, a national level hunter. Thomas comments on the chairman's impressive English, but expresses disbelief that they don't know the current whereabouts of Sung Jin-woo. The chairman explains how hard it is to track Jinwoo, revealing that even their surveillance team failed to keep tabs on him. This amuses Thomas, who switches the subject to his friend, Hwang Dong-so, mentioning the trouble he caused in Korea. Chairman Go promptly states that they are not in the position to tell an S-rank hunter what to do, but grows irritated at the familiarity between Thomas and Hwang. Thomas then requests that the association deny Hwang entry into South Korea, only to learn that they've already done so. The chairman confirms this, and the two men end up shaking hands, agreeing to work together when necessary. During the interaction, Chairman Go feels like a little bit of a child under Thomas's imposing presence. Thomas brings up the Jeju Island crisis of recent, clarifying that he only intends to help if the association can afford his fees. After vaguely discussing the matter, he leaves to catch his flight. Chairman Go then offers them hunters for company, and Thomas accepts, before finally instructing that their conversation remain confidential. Once Thomas then departs, the chairman wonders if it was foolish to hope that a national level hunter would help with the Jeju Island raid. Mr. Wu reassures him though, reminding him that they already have an agreement with Japan. Apparently though, one of Japan's top hunters is coming to visit the country later this day. As for Jinwoo, he's still pretty damn busy razing demon clans and their castles to the ground, amassing thousands of experience points in the process. He has so far managed to reach level 87 and marvels at how much more experience he gains from fighting higher level opponents. Adding to his progress, Igris and Tank have both reached their max levels and request to advance to the next. Jinwoo obviously accepts, and the Shadow Soldiers ascend into the air, spinning as they transform. Igris is promoted from Knight to Elite Knight, while Tank advances from Elite Shadow Beast to Knight. The system prompts Jinwoo to name Tank, but he opts to keep the original name here. The new Igris then emerges, radiating its immense power, and Jinwoo, seeing this, admits that the being is now on par with an S-rank hunter. Tank 2 becomes a formidable force, compared to at least a top tier A rank. As Jinwoo admires his newly advanced soldiers, Esil interrupts. He tells her to stop calling him sir, but she struggles to comply. Instead, she asks if he remembers how many clans he's destroyed. After some thought, Jinwoo counts 9. Taking this in, Esil explains that top nobles govern each floor starting from the 90th. These nobles are even stronger than high-ranking ones, so she even suggests negotiating with them for permits. Jinwoo though counters that Esil's people would have never negotiated with him in the first place if he were weaker, leaving her speechless. He then promises to make her clan the #1 clan, despite the many hierarchical disputes among demon nobles. When he mistakenly calls her clan Radish, she corrects him with "It's Radaru," and asks why he's favouring her clan. With a straight face, Jinwoo replies that he's taken a liking to her. This leaves Esil flustered, her cheeks flush red as she stares at the ground. In truth, Jinwoo simply finds her reminiscent of Jinho, which makes him wonder if he's actually the type to get along with dorks. True to Esil's earlier warnings though, the challenges Jinwoo face grow significantly tougher starting from the 90th floor. The monsters were not only more numerous, but also ranked much higher than those he had encountered on the lower floors. The relentless battles gradually drained his mana, primarily because his shadows were constantly being destroyed and then regenerated during combats. It's fair to say though, that his progress through the 90th floor wasn't due to just luck. Now standing on the 97th floor, Jinwoo has managed to rise to level 90. Using his 2 trusty daggers, he makes quick work of the monsters before him. By the time they're defeated, Esil is left in awe of his own strength. She can't help but ask if all humans are as powerful as he is. Jinwoo though responds honestly, saying that there may be 1 or 2 others like him. At that moment, Go Gun-hee and Chae Ha-in come into mind, as he considers them to be on a tier above the other S ranks. Jinwoo even believes that Ha-in surpasses Choi Jong-in, often regarded as Korea's strongest hunter. Moreover, Jinwoo feels that he himself might have already surpassed Go Gun-hee's level. Suddenly, Jinwoo turns to Esil and tells her to head back down, promising that he'll handle the rest here on his own. His words leave Esil visibly upset, and she asks if she's no longer of use to him. Amused, Jinwoo simply thanks her for everything she has done so far. However, Esil takes a moment to think before suddenly shouting that she's coming with him. She insists on witnessing what he's capable of achieving, and Jinwoo, slightly amused with this, decides to let her join. Together, they then step through the portal to the 98th floor. Meanwhile, at the Incheon International Airport, Mr. Goto Ryuji and his interpreter arrive from Tokyo. As they step off the plane, Goto notices the bustling commotion around the airport. He even senses the presence of a powerful individual nearby. His interpreter, curious, asks if the person could be stronger than he is. Goto doesn't answer though, instead mulling over the idea that someone that strong would have no reason to be at an airport. At that moment, a representative from South Korea's Hunter Association arrives to greet them. Apologizing for the delay, the representative explains that a national level hunter is currently visiting South Korea for personal business, urging Goto not to worry. As they then proceed, Goto quietly wonders if the American hunter's visit is somehow related to recent events. Soon after, Goto finds himself sitting across from Chairman Go Gun-hee. The chairman takes a moment to appraise the Japanese hunter, acknowledging him as the only hunter in Asia capable of standing toe-to-toe with Liu Zhigang. Japan currently boasts 21 S-rank hunters, 11 of whom belong to Goto's Blade Guild. Unlike South Korea, where multiple guilds compete for dominance, Japan's Blade Guild reigns supreme, making it the second largest guild in Asia, second only to one in China. The meeting then finally begins with Goto's interpreter, Hanekawa, introducing herself and quickly relaying her master's words. Goto stresses the urgency of addressing the Jeju Island crisis following the catastrophic events. Promising Japan's full support there, Goto proposes forming a united strike squad composing of top-ranking hunters from both countries. When the chairman seeks clarification, Goto confirms that they are aiming to form an alliance to eliminate the mutated ants. The chairman though expresses concern over the dangers of such a mission, only for Goto to assure him that they've devised a strategy suitable for an S-rank gate. Hanekawa then hands over detailed files containing their findings on the mutated ants. According to their research, the ants, despite their formidable strength, have critical weaknesses, a short lifespan of just 1 year. Goto suggests targeting the ant queen, reasoning that once she is killed, the entire colony will perish within a year. While the chairman acknowledges the plan's logic, he points out the challenge of getting close to the queen. Goto counters by explaining that they've studied past battles and discovered that the ants occasionally leave their tunnels during large-scale confrontations. He proposes using a team of S-rank hunters, including himself, to draw out the ants' forces, creating an opportunity for South Korea's hunters to infiltrate the tunnels and eliminate the queen. The chairman, impressed but skeptical, asks why Goto is willing to mobilize so many of his guild's strongest hunters. Internally, Goto reflects on his ambition to achieve national level status by using the Jeju Island raid as a stepping stone. He views the raid as an opportunity to elevate Japan's prestige while minimizing personal risks. Outwardly, however, he maintains a composed demeanor, emphasizing the mutual benefits of cooperation. In deep thought himself, the chairman considers South Korea's limited resources. With only 8 S-rank hunters, 6 including himself and Min Byung-gyu, the odds seem daunting. Flipping through the strategy report he was just given, he recalls Jinwoo's incredible feat, particularly his solo clearance of an A-rank gate. The chairman concludes that, with Jinwoo's help, the Jeju Island raid might actually succeed. Meanwhile, Jinwoo has already reached level 93 by the time he and Esil arrive at the 100th floor. The air is bitterly cold compared to the lower levels, and the desolate landscape feels eerily silent. Suddenly, a massive flying beast descends from the sky, landing on a crumbling building nearby. Seated atop the creature is none other than Baran, the Demon King. One look at Baran and Jinwoo immediately senses the overwhelming power emanating from him. Doubt creeps in as he wonders if he has what it takes to defeat such a formidable foe. Baran's thirst for blood sends shivers down Esil's spine, leaving her frozen in place. She stares at the Demon King in disbelief, as this is her first time ever laying eyes on him. Jinwoo steals a glance at her and notices her trembling, an unmistakable reaction to the overwhelming power radiating from Baran. Shifting his focus, Jinho studies the beast that carries the Demon King into battle. It's a Wyvern named Kaiselin, and he predicts that its ability to fly will make this fight far more challenging. As if to prove his point, the Wyvern then takes to the skies once again, forcing Jinho to wonder if it's possible to extract its shadow since it isn't a demon. However, he doesn't really have the luxury of time here to dwell on such thoughts because Baran summons his dark army. Massive doors then rise from the ground, opening to release an endless wave of demon soldiers, knights and generals. The army pours out in an overwhelming number, forming in a semicircle around Jinho. He quickly assesses the situation. The knights and generals appear to be A rank at the very least, and with more than 100 of them alongside thousands of lesser soldiers, the sheer size of the army is staggering. But Jinho's only concern is whether the battle has officially begun. Esil, overwhelmed by the sight, asks what they're supposed to do. Jinho doesn't respond, remaining still as the monsters draw closer. Panicking, Esil screams his name, but he continues to wait in silence. As soon as the monsters enter its range, Jinho activates his Monarch's domain, instantly boosting the stats of his shadow soldiers by 50%. Without hesitation, he commands his shadows to rise. From beneath the ground, shadow soldiers emerge, their swords piercing through the enemy ranks in unison, impaling demons by the dozen. Esil can only gape in astonishment at the spectacle. Among the chaos, some larger demons attempt to attack Jinho directly, but his generals quickly intervene. Tank roars ferociously, slamming into one of the demons with bone-crushing force. Iron charges in, severing another demon's leg clean off at the knee. Meanwhile, Igris skillfully carves an X across the chest of a third monster before leaping back to safety. The strategic maneuver then gives Tusk the opening he needs. Tusk begins chanting his hymn of blazing fire, empowering the spell with the Orb of Avarice. Moments later, an inferno erupts, consuming hundreds of enemies in a single, devastating strike. The sheer scale of destruction leaves Esil utterly speechless. While she continues to marvel at Jinho's immense power, she becomes increasingly worried. To her, it's clear that Baran now sees Jinho as a serious threat that must be eliminated. This realization plunges her into a moral dilemma, torn between her allegiances as a demon and her bond with Jinho. As Esil struggles with her inner conflict, the Wyvern suddenly charges lightning into its mouth, replacing the usual fire breath. It then unleashes the lightning into the sky, before it then comes crashing down with terrifying precision, obliterating Jinho's shadow in an instant. Reacting quickly, Jinho shields himself with the robe he acquired and pulls Esil beneath its protection. He soon realizes though that the lightning isn't just an attack, it's also a wide area stun spell. Worse yet, he deduces that his mana reserves will be drained rapidly and his soldiers will be annihilated if he can't find a way to counter the spell. In a desperate bid, Jinho sets Esil down and dashes towards a ruined building. Using it as a pivot point, he leaps into the air, aiming to stab one of the Wyvern's wings. However, Baran anticipates the move, effortlessly blocking the strike with his blade. He counters by slamming Jinho with the blunt side of the weapon, sending him hurtling towards the ground. Jinho then crashes into the rubble below, letting out a frustrated groan as he then struggles to finally get back to his feet. Before he can recover, Baran prepares another lightning attack and launches it directly at him. Jinho sprints as fast as he can, but the lightning relentlessly chases him, obliterating absolutely everything in its path. He acknowledges how fast his opponent is and fears that even his robe might not protect him from the next strike. Just then, Tusk launches a powerful wave of flames, meeting Baran's lightning head on. The two attacks collide, creating an explosive struggle for dominance. The clash sends shockwaves ripping through the battlefield, with bits of lightning and fire spilling out and devastating the surroundings. Tusk pushes his flames with everything he has, and to Jinho's surprise, the fire consumes one of the Wyvern's wings. Baran, caught off guard, watches as his mount spirals out of control. Jinho, standing there, silently thanks Tusk for his timely intervention and for making excellent use of the Orb of Avarice. The Wyvern then crashes to the ground like a stone falling under gravity, leaving Baran without his aerial advantage. Now, Jinho and the Demon King stand face to face. Wasting no time at all, Jinho points his blade at Baran, his voice steady as he quips, "I'm getting tired of being looked down on." The two warriors lock eyes, and with no further words to exchange, Baran steps forward. Both then ready themselves for the battle that will determine everything. Fortunately though, Jinho possesses several abilities that don't require him to expend mana, such as the Commander's Touch and the skill used to summon and preserve his shadows. Commander's Touch allows him to apply physical force to objects without using mana, though this skill still needs to be upgraded to lift larger objects. As for summoning his shadows, he doesn't need mana to call them forth, but suffers from the consequences if they're destroyed. Each shadow draws on Jinwoo's mana to regenerate, and once his reserves are depleted, they'll retreat back into his shadow reserve. Considering this, Jinwoo begins to wonder if Baran has a bottomless well of mana. His soldiers keep returning and there's no visible sign of Baran's mana depleting. Unfortunately, Jinwoo can't say the same for himself. His mana reserves are rapidly diminishing as Baran continues to decimate his soldiers. Before long, the Demon King makes his way towards Jinwoo and unleashes a lightning attack without hesitation. Thankfully, Tusk's protective barrier deflects the blow, giving Jinwoo a brief moment to lament his inability to replenish his mana. The situation becomes increasingly dire when Jinwoo realizes it's harder to regenerate mana when his high-ranking shadow soldiers are destroyed. It's clear that he won't be able to win this fight alone, so he resolves to defeat Baran as quickly as possible before his mana and shadows run out. Iron steps forward first, wielding his massive axe and roaring as he challenges the Demon King. However, Baran is swift enough to knock the blade clean off Iron's axe and stab him directly in the face. As if it weren't enough, Baran follows up by unleashing a burst of lightning, temporarily disabling Iron. Igris is then next. Leaping from above with his sword poised to strike, he swings before even landing, aiming straight at Baran. The Demon King, however, intercepts the attack by blocking with his arm, gripping the blade tightly. Without hesitation, he stuns Igris with a bolt of lightning discharged from his mouth. Seeing no other option, Jinwoo joins the fight himself, activating his critical attack skill. He launches himself at Baran, unleashing a flurry of strikes. To his shock, Baran effortlessly blocks each one. The Demon King then seizes an opportunity, grabs Jinwoo by the neck and lifts him off the ground, preparing to finish him off. But before Baran can strike, Igris and Iron somehow return, working together to intercept the blow. Seizing this small window, Jinwoo plunges both of his blades into Baran's arm, forcing him to release his grip. Before Baran can recover, Igris follows up by stabbing the Demon King's other arm, causing him to drop his weapon. Enraged, Baran lets out a defying roar, releasing a storm of lightning that engulfs the battlefield in a blinding explosion. Everything within range is obliterated, but Jinwoo survives thanks to Tusk's Hymn of Protection. As the dust settles, Baran summons two new blades and assumes a battle stance. On the other side of the field, Jinwoo raises his own blades, ready to face him. The two warriors launch themselves at each other, meeting in the middle with an earth-shaking collision. Their weapons clash with lethal precision, each strike carrying an intent to kill. Jinwoo activates his critical strike attack once more, accelerating the pace of their duel. To onlookers, their blades become nothing more than blurs as they clash relentlessly. At close range, Baran prepares another lightning strike, and Jinwoo immediately realizes that if he takes the attack at this distance, it'll be the end for him. With no time to escape, he shields himself as best he can. Tusk's protective spell absorbs much of the impact, but Jinwoo loses both of his blades in the process. Not wasting a second, Baran presses the advantage, attempting to slash Jinwoo to pieces. With no other options, Jinwoo relies on his pure strength, grabbing both of Baran's hands to stop the onslaught. It becomes apparent that the Demon King possesses far greater physical power though, leaving Jinwoo at a disadvantage. Seeing him physically trapped, Baran prepares another lightning attack, this time from his mouth. Seeing this, Jinwoo can't help but wonder if the Demon King's mana is truly limitless. Just when things seem hopeless though, Esil suddenly intervenes. She throws her blade at Baran's head, causing him to falter and interrupting his attack. Baran turns his attention to her, visibly enraged and uncertain about what to do with her betrayal. This distraction though gives Jinwoo the opportunity he needs. Drawing on his intelligence stats and using Commander's Touch, he exerts incredible force and rips both of Baran's arms clean off. Jinwoo, now filled with fury, prepares to end the battle. The murderous glare he then shoots at Baran is enough to convey the intentions he has. With unrelenting force, Jinwoo delivers a devastating uppercut that carries enough power to decimate the Demon King. Baran's lifeless body then collapses to the ground, and Esil screams Jinwoo's name in disbelief. Moments later, a notification appears declaring the Demon King's defeat. Instantly after, two more notifications follow, informing Jinwoo that he has obtained Baran's soul and successfully completed the quest. Esil sprints towards Jinwoo, who is now seated on the ground, struggling to catch his breath. As she reaches him, he tells her to inform her father that the Radish clan is now the #1 clan. Esil responds with a weary smile, correcting him that it's Radaru, not Radish, which I don't know how he's getting Radish. Maybe it's a translation or something, maybe like, I don't know. Someone let me know down in the comment section below. As Jinwoo's infantry gathers the essence stones, a series of notifications pop up, informing him of his spoils from defeating the Demon King. Among the items, he's obtained Baran's ring, long sword, 2 daggers, horns, and finally, his purified blood. Without hesitation, Jinwoo equips the ring, activating its effect alongside his necklace and earring. As the set effect takes hold, his focus shifts entirely to Baran's purified blood. The system explains that while the blood has been purified, traces of poisonous substances may still linger. To neutralize any remaining toxins, Jinwoo must combine the blood with 2 additional items, the fragment of the world tree and the spring water from the Forest of Echoes. Acting swiftly, Jinwoo retrieves the required materials from his inventory, prompting Esil to ask if he's alright. Obviously, bro doesn't respond, instead giving his system the go-ahead to prepare the holy water of life. To his dismay though, the system reveals that the success of the process depends on his intelligence stats. A countdown from 10 begins, and Jinwoo starts to panic, silently berating himself for not focusing more on his intelligence stats during his level ups. Before his anxiety can spiral though, Esil reassures him with a cheerful smile, telling him he has nothing to worry about. True to her words, the countdown ends and the potion is successfully crafted. A wave of relief washes over Jinwoo and he grins from ear to ear, clenching his fist in triumph. It's then that he realizes the spring water from the Forest of Echoes has been completely depleted, though the fragment of the world tree and Baran's blood were only partially used. He brushes this aside for now, choosing instead to admire the holy water of life, a potion with extraordinary magical properties capable of curing any illness. However, the system notes that for maximum effect, the potion must be consumed entirely. Obviously, Jinwoo can't help but worry whether this potion will cure his mother's condition, but his eagerness to find out overrides his doubts. At that moment, Iron then drags over the Wyvern's corpse as though it was sensing Jinwoo's thoughts. Seeing this, Jinwoo praises Iron with an approving attaboy before resurrecting the Wyvern as a shadow soldier, which is freaking dope as. Esil, clearly shocked by this, watches the transformation in awe. The system then prompts Jinwoo to name his new soldier, but he stumbles over his words multiple times, unable to decide what he wants. Eventually, he settles on the name Esil, and the Wyvern soars into the sky as a newly reborn creature. Excitedly, Esil suggests that they ride Kaisel's back to return to her clan quickly. However, Jinwoo is more concerned with leaving the dungeon as soon as possible. While Esil chatters about the banquet her clan will hold in their honor, Jinwoo anxiously waits to see what his rewards are. At last, the first reward appears, a top-tier runestone containing the Shadow Exchange skill. Alongside it, he gains 30 extra stat points, earning him the prestigious title of Demon Slayer. Obviously, watch my full Demon Slayer story if you guys haven't already, but either way, examining the current rune in his hand, Jinwoo watches as it cracks open, granting him the lowest level of the Shadow Exchange skill. The system explains that this ability will allow him to swap places with any of his Shadow soldiers. However, this skill comes with a 3-hour cooldown, which can be reduced through upgrades. Thrilled by these implications, Jinwoo declares aloud that he can now essentially teleport anywhere. Turning to Esil, he informs her that she'll have to return to her clan without him. When she brings up the banquet again, Jinwoo points out that her clan's territory is simply too far away. With that, he then bids her farewell, activating the Shadow Exchange skill. In an instant, he swaps places with one of the shadows he had stationed on patrol. The shadow that he swapped with materializes before Esil, leaving her visibly confused as the two just stare at each other. Meanwhile, Jinwoo reappears in his neighborhood, pleased to confirm that the skill worked perfectly. Without wasting any time, he summons Esil and climbs onto his back. Together, they then take to the skies, soaring over the city towards the hospital. Elsewhere, Mr. Wu and Chairman Go-Gun-Hee are burning the midnight oil, discussing strategies to deal with the mutated ant crisis. Mr. Wu presents the chairman with satellite footage sent from Japan, explaining that this specific satellite has the ability to detect mana. The video confirms Goto Ryuji's report. The ants are leaving their tunnels, leaving their queens behind. Gun-hee observes that the ants seem to evolve with each new generation, their appearance visibly changing. Based on their estimated lifespan, he deduces that each new generation likely lasts no more than a year. Gun-hee expresses concern about the ants returning to their queen if they sense danger. In response, Mr. Wu explains that they plan to use jamming signals to disrupt the ants' communication, which relies on special waves. If these signals are disrupted, the ants will become disorientated. Just as Gun-hee begins to see the brilliance of this plan in action, he suddenly senses an intense surge of energy in the area. Alarmed, he asks if Mr. Wu felt it too, but doesn't wait for an answer before inquiring about Jinwoo's whereabouts. Mr. Wu regretfully admits he's been completely unable to locate him. At the same time, Mr. Park Yun-ho is having drinks with his friend Min Byung-gu. Just then, Park suddenly senses the same energy spike and asks Byung-gu if he knows what's causing it. The S-rank healer brushes it off, joking that it's probably Choi Jong-in and Cha Hae-in squabbling over company shares again. Realizing this is a possibility, Park lets the matter drop, pouring another drink instead. Smirking, Byung-gu urges his friend to relax and enjoy the evening, teasing him about getting wrinkles from worrying too much. As Mr. Park takes another shot of his soju, he reflects on how everything about Min Byung-gu seems peculiar, even his sense of humour. Byung-gu holds the distinction of being the first S-rank hunter to retire in perfect health, an uncommon feat. Typically, S-rank hunters earn extraordinary income, so Mr. Park finds it baffling that someone from a poor background would voluntarily give it all up. Breaking into his thoughts, Byung-gu asks if Park really plans to participate in the Jeju Island raid. Park doesn't deny it, prompting his friend to remind him of how On-suk lost his life. Instead of faltering though, Park firmly replies that On-suk's death is precisely why he has to go. In his eyes, joining the raid is the only way to prevent a similar tragedy from befalling others across the nation. Byung-gu sighs heavily, wondering aloud when his friend became so patriotic. In response, Park explains that it doesn't matter, he has to go regardless. Irritated now, Byung-gu crosses his arms and declares that he won't join the raid under any circumstances. He adds that if Park came by hoping to recruit him, he's wasting his time. Park clarifies that he was never here to convince him, but to say goodbye, emphasizing that this could possibly be the last time they ever see each other. This revelation leaves Byung-gu momentarily speechless. Eventually, he breaks the silence by mentioning that he's preparing to take the teacher certification exam. It turns out that Byung-gu simply wants to live a normal life, though Park finds it too hard to believe that teaching is his true plan. In response, Byung-gu recounts how Yoo Jin Construction offered him a position as a guildmaster. He also adds that several other companies have made him tempting offers since his initial retirement. But the truth is, he no longer wants to live a life where survival depends on killing or being killed. Instead, he has now decided to take the certification exam to teach Korean history. Curious, Park asks why. Byung-gu explains that he has a fondness for historical dramas and will prefer to read about historical wars rather than to live through them. A faint smile touches Park's lips as he contemplates the notion of normalcy and the fact that most healers seem to have an aversion to fighting. Soon enough though, Byung-gu interrupts his musings and the two share another drink together. Meanwhile, the window to Jinwoo's mother's hospital room is ajar, and Jinwoo jumps onto the sill, silently watching her pale, sickly face. He steels himself, knowing that there's no turning back now if this does not work. Stepping into the room, he reflects on how the system has been nothing but short of miraculous so far. After all, it's the reason he went from E rank to S rank. Trusting it once more, Jinwoo uncorks the holy water of life. Carefully lifting it to his mother's head, he prepares to feed her the potion. His hands tremble uncontrollably, forcing him to pause and take deep breaths. Then he slowly pours the liquid down her throat, praying that it will somehow work. As he does this, his eyes catch sight of a scar on the back of her neck, sending him down memory lane. A younger Jinwoo had wanted to help his mother wash her hair, but accidentally poured scalding water all over her neck. Even as the water burned her skin, she knelt to his eye level and asked if he was alright, as though her pain didn't matter as long as he was okay. Returning to the present, Jinwoo watches as his mother's cheeks regain their colour, but she doesn't awake. Anxiety grips him as he begs her to open her eyes, cradling her head in his hands. She is the reason he wanted to become stronger, the reason for everything. All Jinwoo wants in life is to take on the burdens she carried for so long, but the universe seems unwilling to grant him this happiness. As he plays with her, Jin-ah sits at home, struggling to focus on her homework. Eventually, she gives up and decides to visit a nearby store. As she steps outside, a warm breeze ruffles her hair, making her think that summer is just around the corner. Back at the hospital, Jinwoo's head is still bowed in desperation when his mother suddenly sits upright. Her first words are to ask him if it's really him, and once he confirms it, she immediately wants to know how long she's been asleep. Jinwoo hesitates before admitting that it has been 4 years. His voice trembles as she asks about Jin-ah's well-being, but he reassures her that Jin-ah is doing just fine. Relieved, she thanks him for keeping his promise, flashing a smile he hasn't seen in years. Reaching for his hand, she calmly observes that he's hurt, noting that he must have endured so much. Hearing this, Jinwoo's composure shatters and tears stream down his face. He tries to stifle his emotions, but fails, silently gripping his mother's hand as the moment overwhelms him. I think it's deserved. In the same arc that Jinwoo gets S rank, right at the very beginning, he also gets his mother back, which is freaking dope, man. It's just dope to see the glow up from Jinwoo, going from a literal, dude looked like the scrawniest loser in the first chapters to now he's just this freaking Chad with max aura, flying a freaking dragon. It's insane. Of course, if you guys want to support me further, make sure to go down and check out the Patreon down below where you can get early access to all of the content and be seen at the beginning or end of the video, wherever I decide to put the Patreon names and stuff, wherever it fits nicely. But either way, of course, if you are new around here as well, then do subscribe, as it really helps out with pushing my content to a bunch of new amazing people. And leave a like, help push this video to say 5 to 10k likes, as it'll just show me that you all want the next solo leveling arc, which is the Jeju Island raid arc. I can't wait to actually go over that arc, and I probably am going to just release it anyway because it's insane. I doubt the anime is going to cover it this season, but it will be a season 3 thing, or a very end of season 2 into season 3 thing, I would imagine. By the way, I can't thank you all enough for watching, but for now, it's been your professional degenerate Diavolo, and I will see you all in a bit. Bye.